Hello students, it is Peace Daddy here with another lesson for you. Today we are going to do a lesson on the squares of numbers, and we're going to go from the numbers 1 to 10. The squares of numbers 1 to 10. And there's a couple of questions I want you to think about while we're doing this work. What does it mean to be a square number? What does that mean when we say we're going to square a number or that number is squared? And how does this concept apply to area? So there's a term in math called area. So when we're doing this work, think about how does this apply to area? If you're working from home and you do not have the Montessori materials with you, you can log on to www.virtualmontessorimaterials.com, www.virtualmontessorimaterials.com, and go to the bead bars. There's a little square with a picture in it that says bead bars, and click on that, and you can just do this work virtually at home. So we are going to start out by taking the number 1 once, and I'm going to use beads from the bead cabinet or my decanomial bead box that look like this, and I'm going to start placing them on the rug in a diagonal pattern, and we're going to take a look at that pattern and see how it progresses with each new step. So, take 1 once. If you take 1 one time, that looks like this. If we take 1 once, it's 1 times 1, and that's 1. Okay? So if you take 1 once, that's 1. Now if you take 2 twice, then taking 2 twice will look like this. Here's a 2, and then here's another 2. So that's taking 2 twice, right there. So taking 1 once is 1 times 1, which equals 1. Taking 2 times is 4. Okay? Now if I told you to take 3 times, that would be 3 times, and 3 times is 9. Now we can take 4 times. And if I write that, 4 times is 16. So 4 taken 4 times is 16. And if you take 5 times, it looks like this if you use the beads. This is 5 taken 5 times. And if you write it, it looks like that. Okay, keep going and do 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I write 6 groups of 6, that makes 36. 6 times is 36. I'm going to do 7. Take 7 times. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 times, like that. So if I write that, 7 times 7 is 49. And 8 times. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 8 times is 64. Nine nines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 nines makes 81. Nine nines is 81. And then the last one is going to be 10 groups of 10. And you might already know that 10 groups of 10 is 100. And if we make 10 10 bars, I'm going to slide each of these back quickly just a little bit so we can see the whole pattern here. Right. So 9 nines, and then the last one is 10 tens. So make sure we have some single ones here to work with. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tens. Okay, so 10 groups of 10 is 100. Okay, so what we're doing is we're squaring these numbers. We squared the number 1, 2, 3, all the way up through 10. We've built the squares. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these smaller, or I'm sorry, the connected squares, and I can't place a 1 square on top of a 1 because they're round beads, right? But if I could take this round bead and place it on top of the 1 square back here, it would fit just perfectly, but it won't because it's round and it'll fall off. But this is a 2 square connected from the bead cabinet, and that 2 square will lay right on top of those 2 bars, 2 groups of 2, and it covers it just right. And the 3 square here will go right on top of those, the 3 3s, the 4 square goes perfectly there, the 5 square goes perfectly on there, the 6 square goes right there, 7 square, the 8 square, the 9 square, and 10 squared. So there's another way that we can write all of those squares, and that's what I wanted to show you, is that 1 times 1 can also be written as 1 squared. So it looks like that. So 1 times 1 can be written as 1 squared. That 1 that's in your answer is called the base. So the large number, the way that you normally write numbers when you're writing squares, that big number is called the base. And then the little number that's up and to the right just a little bit, that's called an exponent. An exponent. Okay. So the exponent is the smaller number that's up and to the right. And then the base is the regular size number, the number that in this case is a little bit to the left. So write that in your copybook so you have a diagram of what a base is and what an exponent is. And we'll do a couple of more examples right now, so you'll have a few more examples. So in the example of 2, when we have 2 groups of 2, what would that look like? Well, 2 times 2 equals 2 squared. So you have a large 2 in your answer, that's known as the base. And then you have a smaller 2 that's up and a little bit to the right, and that's called the exponent. So when I take 2 groups of 2, that's called squaring 2. So I can say that 2 different ways. I can say that is 2 squared, or I can say that is 2 raised to the power of 2. 2 squared is the same thing as 2 raised to the power of 2. And if I do 3 groups of 3, that's going to be 3 squared. So 3 groups of 3 is 3 squared. So 3 is the base. 3 is the number that I'm taking. I'm taking 3 times. So however many times I take it, okay, I took 3 2 times. There's a 3 and there's a 3. That's the number that you put there. That's why 3 is squared, because I've multiplied 3 times itself, and there's 2 3s, 1, 2. Okay, so it's 3 squared. 4 groups of 4 is 4 squares. Okay, so it means taking 4 times. would be 4 squared, or 4 to the second power. That's another way you can say it. 4 raised to the second power. 4 times 4 is 4 squared. And you just continue that pattern. So I'm just gonna fill it out till I get to the bottom of the page here. And then I might even have to start a new page because I'm writing kind of big on these small cards so you can see them. But this is what the next 3 would look like. See the pattern? Every time I take the number, the next number, and I multiply it by itself. So 5 times 5 is 5 squared. 6 times 6 is 6 squared. 7 times 7 is 7 squared. What does that mean again? That means I'm taking the number and I'm multiplying it by itself the same number of times. So if I start out with 7, then I multiply 7 by itself 7. So 7 times 7, and that makes 7 squared. Again, 7 is the base, and the 2 is called an exponent. It's called an exponent. You write it a little smaller and you write it up to the top right-hand corner. Okay, let's write down the other 3. 8 groups of 8 is also 8 squared. 9 groups of 9 is 9 squared. And 10 groups of 10 is 10 squared, or 100. Eight taken 8 times is the same thing as 8 squared. 9 taken 9 times is the same thing as 9 squared. And 10 taken 10 times is 10 squared, which is also 100. Right? 10 groups of 10 is a square of 10, and that makes 100. And you know, there's an interesting thing that happens here is when I write 1 times 1 underneath that, you can kind of see a pattern there. There's a 1 in 10, and there's also a 1 in 1, but the 1 in 10 has a 0 after it. And of course the 1 has no 0 after it, and then the 1 in 1, the second 1, no 0, and of course the 10 has a 0 after it. And then if you look at the answer, when you're squaring it, it's 10 squared, or 1 squared. And then how many zeros are in 10 times 10? Well, there's 1 0 there and 1 0 there. Do you see that? There's a 0 there and a 0 there. And then look how many zeros are in 100. 2. Isn't that interesting? When I'm multiplying groups of 10, the number of zeros that are in my factors, the 10 and the 10 over here on this side of the equation, is equal to the number of zeros in my product. And then look down here, 1 times 1, no zeros. And is there a 0 in my answer? No, no zeros. Okay, so that's been the squares of numbers 1 through 10. And the last thing that I wanted to mention to you, I said it at the very beginning, is we're going to think, you know, what does that have to do with area? If you've ever heard that term before, what does area mean? Well, area is really useful when you're trying to find the measurement of things that are flat on the floor. If your mom or dad has ever bought a new rug, it's really important to know the area of the floor where you're buying the rug. If the area of the floor where you live is 7 by 7, and the rug that you buy for your floor is 10 by 10, well, the rug will be too large, right? Maybe if we were talking in feet, a 7 foot by 7 foot room, you wouldn't want to buy a 10 foot by 10 foot rug. It's too large, okay? So That's how area applies to squares. When you're squaring something, you're finding the area. You're finding out how long it is by how wide it is. You're multiplying the length times the width. And that's how that relates to area. Once again, I want to thank you for watching. This has been Peace Daddy, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.